So I was talking on the phone with someone I know who works at an Apple store. I know, Apple analogy already. It's nothing new for me. But he works in an Apple store, and he was recognizing, you know, Ray, I deal with people who come into the store with problems that are solved in 5 minutes easy. But I find it actually takes about a half an hour to get it done, because I find myself like fighting with them the whole way to solve their problem. And he's like, I was trying to understand, why does this happen that it takes so long? And he realized, oh my gosh, they're actually grieving in our interaction. So while we have our interaction, they go through the 5 steps of grief all in a short little time span, just like rapid fire succession. So if you haven't heard about the 5 stages of grief before, it's this. This was made famous by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. First, you go through a phase of denial. Then you have anger, then you bargain, then you have depression, and then you have acceptance, right? So they come into the store and they're like, hey, problem with my iPhone is not working, I don't know what went wrong. So he checks it and it's like, oh, looks like you have water damage on your phone. It's not covered under Apple warranty, but hey, you know what? Throw a few $100 at me, I can get that replaced for you right away, you'll be on your way. They're like, what? No, there's no way this has water damage, it's impossible. There's no way. He's like, it's the test right here. No. And then they move on. They're like, this is outrageous. Apple products always have this issue. Don't you guys ever do products without water damage as an issue? Like, what's wrong with you? And then they bargain. No, but do you have to replace the whole phone? Can't you just change a chip for $75 or something small? And then they move on to depression of, this always happens to me. All the time. My life is awful. This never happens to my sister. I don't know why she always has it good. It's just my life that's a wreck. And then finally, acceptance of, okay, all right, I'll pay the money. We'll get this replaced, and I'll move on, right? So he's kind of learned, the thing is, he's not emotionally attached to it. So it's not an issue for him. It's like, oh, just replace the phone. There's a million of these, right? For them, it's like, this is my phone. They're emotionally attached. And so he's learned to work in their grieving process into their interaction. Right? Because at the Apple store, their schedule is incredibly tight. I don't know if you've been in there lately, but it's like a McDonald's play place to some degree. Like there's just people running everywhere. But he was saying, I've recognized I don't try to jump to the end anymore. I don't jump them to the end. I just let the natural course take its place. And I just kind of go with them in the exchange. He's learned how to work it in. So we've been going through a book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality and Emotionally Healthy Church by Pete Scazzero, and in it he says this: in emotionally healthy churches, people embrace grief as a way to become more like God. They understand what a critical component of discipleship grieving our losses is. Why? It is the only pathway to becoming a compassionate person like our Lord Jesus. And in the book, it talks a little bit about sort of different types of losses in life. There are some that are very extremely significant losses, such as premature death of a spouse, death of a child, divorce, rape, emotional abuse, irreversible cancer, suicide, things that are just tragic, unbelievable, difficult losses. There are some that are more sort of natural to some degree, such as growing older, your youthful skin is it's aging. You're losing sort of your youth. Or even when you move to a different area, some of your friendships fade away. You lose friendships that you used to have. Leadership changes in the church, or if your pet passes away, or even graduating from high school. For a lot of parents, they have to go through a grieving period of, oh, my little kid's all grown up. They're not who they used to be. They're not financially dependent on me anymore. I can't treat them like a kid. I don't see them as often. Even though that they still have a child, they're changing, and so there's things that you lose through that. And then it also talks about basically insignificant losses. And the trick here is that there really aren't any insignificant losses. In fact, whatever you feel is really insignificant is likely very significant to someone else. Two people can go through the same experience but come away feeling very differently about what happened and how it affected them very emotionally and very traumatizing, that for you may not be as difficult. And you even see this with married couples sometimes, where one kind of decides, yeah, I think we need to get rid of this old thing, right? And then the other spouse is like, what? We can't get rid of that? That means everything to me. This old beat-up t-shirt from middle school, you can't even wear it. What are we going to do with this? Are we going to frame it, put it on display in our house? There's nothing we can do. No, you can't. We have very different different things that we're affected by. So like learning about what's really significant to you can help you have a little more compassion for what's significant to others, even though you may not fully understand. So it's important to remember that loss is the norm of life and not the exception. We have to understand that we will go through life losing things, that will be a part of it. And that's unfortunately because we live in a sinful, fallen world. That's going to be kind of a part of the journey that we're on, which is very difficult. So the more that we learn to mix that in with our life and deal with it appropriately, the better off we're going to be. I'm going to get to a couple Bible verses in a second, but first, I want to read this section from Jerry Sitzer before we show the slide. Jerry Sitzer wrote a book called A Grace Disguised, How the Soul Grows Through Loss. And in it, Jerry, he was in the car and his family was hit on by a drunk driver. And in that car crash, he lost his mother, his wife, and his daughter of 4 years old. And so in this book, he writes this: catastrophic loss, by definition, precludes recovery. It will transform us or destroy us, but it will never leave us the same. It is not therefore true that we become less through loss, unless we allow the loss to make us less, grinding our soul down until there is nothing left. Loss can also make us much more. I did not get over my loved ones. Rather, I absorbed the loss into my life until it became a part of who I am. Sorrow took up permanent residence in my soul and enlarged it. One learns the pain of others by suffering one's own pain. And if we can go back to the first slide of that, he says, catastrophic loss, by definition, precludes recovery. In other words, for him, he will never get his family back. You can't recover that. It's gone. It's lost. Certainly you could remarry and have more children, but you're never going to recover the family that you used to have. It's just not a part of this. And so it has everything to do with, are we going to have this experience make us less, or are we going to learn to be transformed through it? The loss is real. And what we don't want to do is rush through the process of grieving. It's the worst thing that we can do is just push through it as fast as we can, or try to pretend like we're too good for it, or we don't need to go through it. I want to show a clip from the news that I found that I think better kind of illustrates what I like to call the show must go on. It's kind of a disease that we run with, but if you could play that clip for me.
Good morning. Hey, Brett.
Hi, you guys. So I'm here with Richard and Katie from the Utah Nordic Alliance of Utah, and you guys are teaching me how to cross-country ski. So give us some bass. Okay. Yes. Now, I'm going to toss it back to you guys. I just slipped and fell, so we'll have more, but tell people the basics of coming up here and paying $7. You just come up, you pay $7. Anybody can come up here. Anybody's welcome.
Everybody's welcome, young and old. Can come up and ski and have a great day here at Mountain Dell. We've got a race this morning in Park City. And
it just keeps going. It doesn't stop. Like, they do another couple minutes there, and she's just sitting on the ground the whole time. And like, everything in you is just like, stop. What are you doing? This show doesn't have to go on. Like, please, like, just stop and, like, let's pay attention to this. Her first response, like, oh, I slipped. And you're like, no, this wasn't a slip. Like, we're already in the denial part here, right? Like, this isn't working. Like slow down. And I think part of the issue with the show must go on is we oftentimes feel like everybody's watching. Everybody's watching. I can't stop the show for me. Everyone else is counting on me to just lay low and let it just keep running. And in the process, we don't take care of ourselves very well. Also, too, it's never in anyone's plan, right? So when they were getting ready for this broadcast, they had a very scripted, schedule of everything that needs to happen, when and where, and we're cutting to her. But no one in the meeting is ever going to be like, hey, question, what if our reporter faints? What are we going to do about that? Because there's 1,000 possibilities of things to go wrong, and you don't plan for that necessarily. And so when it happens, everyone's just kind of like, oh, this isn't part of the plan. What do we do? Just keep doing the script. Just keep going. Just don't stop, right? I think it's a serious disservice when we mix that into our own lives. It's something that we really need to be careful about. Grieving is not an interruption. It's a part of our lives that we need to pay attention to and mix in. We need to make time for it. So really, we're going to leave you with a few things to make sure that you're doing in terms of grieving. I'm going to hit the first one here, and then Jason will finish up. But the first one is to pay attention. Pay attention to grieving, to loss. I know oftentimes it's like if you're going through a supermarket and you're going along and all of a sudden a whole bunch of cans of soda fall and spill on the ground, explode everywhere. You're just like, I think I'm going to go to cereal now instead. Like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, okay, I'm not going to be a part of this, right? And so in some degree, it's like, I'm not going to pay attention to this. Someone else is going to cover it. I'll go off over here. But it's even worse when you're the one who caused the sodas to fall all over the place. When you cause the spill to happen, then you are especially like, okay, for sure, no one should look now. No one should be a part of this. I did this myself. I'll just take all the pain, all the shame, all the loss. Like, I don't want anyone else around. But really, we need to be mindful of the fact, pay attention to it, don't ignore it, but be like, this happened because of me, and there's loss because of it, and we need to kind of surround each other, comfort one another, grieve with one another. This isn't something that should be isolated and kept away, but in many cases, when you bring it out into the open, you allow room to be comforted, whereas before you didn't have that. You're actually... It's important to keep that open and be honest with people about the real pain that you're going through, instead of just showing up to church like, hey, don't want to just pretend like nothing bad happened to me this weekend. No losses here. I'm still dressed just as nice. Everything's cool. And we kind of do a disservice to ourselves and to others, because then others feel like they don't have room to do the same thing. They feel like, well, everyone's always good, so if I have a loss, then I can't share that because there's no room for it. The schedule is just rolling right along. So let's look at a few things out of the Bible here, because I feel like that's important. First, we're going to look at David and Saul. Now, Saul was king of Israel, and God wasn't real pleased with how he was doing, and so he decides that he wants to replace him with David. In 1 Samuel 13:14, it says, the Lord says, "But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you." And in Acts 13, it says, "When he had removed him, he raised up David to be their king, of whom he testified and said, 'I have found in David a son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, who will do all my will.'" So why am I reading this to you? Well, because this is the plan that God has in store. God's already anointed David to be king, and so Saul's going to be out of the picture soon. And Saul basically hunts David. He wants to kill David. And David is on the run from him. And David even has opportunities where he could kill the king if he wants to and just take the reign right away, but he chooses not to because he's like, it's not my place to kill a person. If he's supposed to die, God will make that happen. It's not going to be on my hands. So he's been running on the run, and at some point, Saul does die. He dies in the midst of battle. So what does David do about this when they find out? Well, in 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11, it says, "David took hold of his clothes and tore them, and so did all the men who were with him. And they mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord and for the house of Israel, because they had fallen to the sword." It seems like of all the times to be like thankful that someone has died, it maybe should have been David, because it's like we got this just kind of wicked king in order here. But instead, he still grieves the loss. In fact, in 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 17, just a few verses later, it says, "David lamented with his lamentation over Saul and Jonathan his son, and he said it should be taught to the people of Judah." He actually writes this out and wants it taught, and I'll read some excerpts here. "Your glory, O Israel, is slain on your high places. How the mighty have fallen. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely, in life and in death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. You daughters of Israel, weep over Saul. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle." And the ESV commentary talks about how, though grievously wronged by Saul, David nonetheless chose to remember Saul in a generous way, setting an example of graciously emphasizing the good that someone has done after that person has died. So not only did he write this, but he's like, we should teach this to people. And like, that's going to take time. And of all the times where it's like, hey, we got a king change here, there's a lot to be done. Like, there's a lot of order of business that we need to go through to keep this machine running. But yet, David seems to understand, no, it's important that we grieve this loss that we really did have as for all of Israel. We need to take care of this. We need to take time for it. He understands that grieving is indispensable to spiritual maturity. But you might be thinking to yourself, well, okay, but that was David. He wasn't exactly the perfect man. He did go on to kind of do some bad things. He had an affair, had a baby from the affair, killed the husband of the mistress. So I don't really, maybe he's not doing it right. Well, let's look at the perfect person, Jesus, right? So in John chapter 11, Jesus is going to see his friend Lazarus, who has died. Now, when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." And I can't help but feel like that might be the stage 2 of anger for her, right? As she's grieving this loss. In the next slide, sorry. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." And what's this next part say? Jesus did not cry because he was too strong for that. No, it's not there. It's Jesus wept. And as some of the people in the young adult group who just saw Pitch Perfect 2 would say, it was the ugly cry. I had the ugly cry, right? Like the awful cry. Like it's not just I'm shedding one single tear because I'm a strong person. It's like he wept over this. It was very important to him. And even, it's worth mentioning, he was there to raise Lazarus from the dead, which he did, right? So of all the times to not be emotional about something, because we're actually going to recover this person, he still takes time to grieve the loss, the death, and he's very compassionate in that regard. And also, too, at the cross, in Matthew chapter 27, when Jesus is about to pass away, it says, "And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, 'Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani,' which is, 'My God is an awesome God, he reigns.'" No, it's not that either. It's, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus, as a human, still goes through very hurtful emotional pains that he has to deal with. He's yelling this out loud. It's not that he doesn't know where God is, right? It's not like Jesus doesn't know all the answers. It's that he's still going through himself. And I think we do a serious disservice when we feel like I'm supposed to be just the happy Christian all the time. There is no loss. There is no pain. I'm above that. Heaven is real, and I'm happy. It just doesn't. We end up being like, I feel like you're not being real with me, and it gets a little odd. So just to close here, Jason and I, as we were preparing for this sermon, we both kind of realized, we both lost our own fathers within the last year. We both lost our father. And my father I loved dearly, and he passed away very unexpectedly. He was 64 years old. He was doing great. He actually had a physical just a few days prior, and the doctor was like, you look great. You're doing healthy things. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just awesome. No warning signs here. And they just passed away in his sleep a few days later. That was really hard for me and my family, especially my mom, obviously, who's been married for such a long time. Now she's kind of like, I don't know. My mom went through cancer, and so she always felt like she was going to go before him, but now she's outliving him. It's like, I don't understand. This is very confusing. And I was kind of thinking about, like, did I handle the grieving process well during that period? And I really feel like I don't know if I fully did. It seemed like there was a lot of things that had to get done. It's like he passed away now. Like, we got to make sure we get the funeral going. And oh man, I got to put together a slideshow. I got to scan these images, and I got to work with the projector guy. And why isn't he here on time? And like 15 minutes till we're going to start. It's like there's all these things clouding me, and I'm not focusing on the grieving process. So I'm finding myself just like in the shower, just crying at random times. Like, I'm definitely going through something here. I need to stop and slow down and focus on it. And so I had a lot of comfort and a lot of help during that time. I mean, people were like, you should just take time off. And I'm like, I don't know what that really means. Do I need time off for this? I feel like I don't want to keep the show from going on, right? And so one thing that I really remember that meant a lot to me was my dad he loved baseball, huge Giants fan. If you'd see his little office room, he had all kinds. Johnny Ilian would I think he would have a heart attack if he was in there. It's amazing. And one of the things that he really loved was the movie The Natural, which it's an amazing it's probably, I believe it's the best baseball movie ever made. And I was thinking to myself, like, I really want to watch that again. I think that would be good for me to watch it and to remember him. And my friend David Mitchell was like, hey man, anything you need, like I'm there for you. And I was like, you want to watch The Natural with me? And he's like, well, I did just say whatever you need, I'll be there for you. So sure, I guess so, yeah. And of course, get to the end of the movie and I cry hard. Like, it's just like, I'm just crying, and David's kind of like, you know, he's moved too, and we're both kind of like, I don't know what to do. Like, we're just two single guys hanging out, crying over a baseball movie. Like, do I touch your knee or do I not? Like, we didn't like establish the rules of conduct beforehand. But honestly, it was super comforting to me just that he was there. He didn't have to say a lot. It didn't matter that he didn't know what to do. It was just that he was there. I don't know if you understood. I mean, I felt bad that he even had to be there. And Jason was kind of like, what did you expect would happen? I'm like, I don't know. I just wanted to watch the movie, you know. And he was there, and that was very comforting, just to know that someone was there who cared and wanted to be there. And I think we do ourselves a great service by trying to pretend like we know what to do when really sometimes we just need to go through the process with each other and be with each other through that.
How good do you think we are at grieving? Do you feel, I don't mean as a church, I mean as a culture. So here we are, we're Americans. This is the culture we live in. I mean, do you feel like we got this or no? I'm seeing a lot of head shakes, no. Yeah, I mean, because you look at the Old Testament and you get these guys, it's like, wow, you guys know what you're doing here. I mean, they rip their clothes. They throw ashes on their head. You don't ever have to ask anyone walking around with a torn shirt and ashes on their head how their day is, right? How's your day today? Can you see I'm in mourning? And it's almost like it sounds crazy to us because we're traditionally, like, we really value people that keep their emotions at a certain level and just kind of keep them there. Maybe even more so with men, but I think that's true really of all of us. And so when we see someone being really emotive about something, it kind of throws us off a little bit. You know, even if it's joy, sometimes we're like, whoa, take a step back. Where's he from? Is he crazy or not? I don't know. You know, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And so I think we don't really know what to do with this, and we tend to want to just get people over it. And so I know as Ray was talking about his dad, and when my dad passed away, and now I'm talking to my mom a whole lot more because she's alone. They're married for 55 years, and then he's gone. And it wasn't a surprise with my dad. My dad had been battling cancer for about 7 years, and the doctors told us at the beginning he wasn't going to make it. That this wasn't something that was going to happen. Their words were, you don't get over this cancer. And so we kind of knew it was there, but it doesn't matter if you know it's coming or not. And that's death. And there's a lot of other ways that we grieve that people want to even minimize more and say, well, it's not like someone died. Well, at least you have your health. Yeah, but I lost my job. Right? And there's always there's a sense in which I think because I can't just say they, it's us, we do it. But we want to be helpful, but I don't think we know how. I don't think we're very good at it. Even people that are really trying their best, and honestly, sometimes especially believers, because we almost want to say like, hey, you're going to see them again someday if it's a death. And they're a believer, you're like, and what that means is smile. Well, look, I'm sorry if I'm not going to smile. I've married for 55 years to the same man, and he's gone, and he's not coming back. I'm going to live the rest of my life without him, and I'm not going to be okay with that. My mom's been telling me this lately. People want me to just be okay. Man, I hate to even say this, but her first day back to church, after all this happened, she'd take a few Sundays off and just didn't want to go back yet. And when she first went back, the first thing that was said to her was, well, you think you're about over this? It's 2 weeks later. And honestly, that person loves her and was trying to hope that she was better. But that's not how this works. That's not how grieving works. That quote, I think, that Ray used is just genius. The thing about catastrophic loss is it doesn't come back, right? It doesn't come back. There's a scripture in Isaiah that talks about God giving us beauty for ashes. Beauty for ashes. But ashes represent catastrophic loss. If something is burnt to ashes, you're not going to put it back together again, right? If I sit on a chair and I break it, well, I got weight issues for one thing. Uh-oh, I need to lose some weight. But if I broke a chair by sitting on it, it's a wooden chair, I could take it to the right guy and he could probably put it back together and, glue some things and fix it good as new. If my chair burns to the ground, I can't take it to anyone and say, fix it, it's gone. And I think there are things in our life that are just gone and we don't know what to do with that. Of all the times, it's crazy. Tonight, my wife and kids are home because I think my dog is dying. Yeah, I know, that really stinks. And part of me keeps saying I should be okay with this. Come on, you grew up on a farm, animals come and go. But I love this dog. I love him so much. And if this is true, if he's going to be gone in the next couple days, I'm going to need some time off. I don't know. I'm going to be a little devastated for a while, and that's just the truth. Whatever that looks like, that's true. I talked to a friend just the other day as I was getting ready for this message. It was a friend who... I asked her if I could talk about this just without using her name, and she said, absolutely, you could use my name if you want, but her childhood was rotten. I mean rotten, a nightmare. A dad who was just completely out of control and drugs and abuse, just some of the worst stories you hear, right? The kind that just make you take a step back. And I said to her, how do you think we've done as Christians, not your church, the other ministry experiences that you've had, how do you think we've done at letting you grieve that? And she said, oh, no, I don't get to grieve it. I get told that God's my father now and that I've got a brand new life and it's okay. And I'm like, yeah. And she said, the thing is, that's true. It's not wrong. God is my father, and he is a good one, and he's better than the one I've had by far. But there's no going back to my childhood and having a good father. That's ashes. It's gone. It'll never come back. That doesn't mean my life can't be good now. But if you never get to go and mourn that, it's really hard to get past it. Matter of fact, I would say that our thesis tonight is that it's impossible to get past it until you've mourned it. And it doesn't matter if it's the loss of a job or a big move or a breakup of a relationship or what. If you don't give yourself the time to mourn it, those songs are written for a reason, right? Right? People feel it, they write a song about it, and then you make a mixtape about the breakup. And sometimes you just need to stay home that night and just go through it. If you're ever going to move past, or else you seem to be stuck. Like that relationship's over, but I'm kind of still stuck in it. I'm not really past it. And I mentioned songs for a reason, because if we're going to talk about David and mourning, you got to think about the Psalms. It's been said that there's a psalm for every sigh. I love that phrase. There's a psalm for every sigh. We tend to gravitate towards the psalms that are declaring something good about God, but over 50% of the psalms are laments. They're the blues. They're the original blues. It's somebody just pouring out their heart in some kind of a loss, some kind of catastrophic loss that they don't understand. And they really get kind of crazy. Listen to what Peter Scazzaro says about the laments that you find in Psalms. He says, the laments pay attention, because that's what we're talking about here. We're still on point number one. We want to pay attention. The laments pay attention to the reality that life can be hard, difficult, and sometimes even brutal. They take notice of the apparent absence of God. They notice when circumstances seem to say that God is not good. They cry out for comfort and care. You see, I think we struggle with that because we know God is good and we know he is there. So it's really hard for us to deal with the situations when he doesn't feel good and it feels like he's not there. We just think we need to cheerlead ourselves past it. But you are good and you are there. Where instead, David sat down and wrote a song about it, right? He sat down on regular occasions and said, God, I don't know where you are. I'm going to write a song about it, and we're all going to sing it to you. God, you're really disappointing me right now, and I'm going to teach that song to everyone I know. And you know what? God is so good with that he put it in the canon of Scripture. He kept it in there for us to sing over and over again for all of eternity. He believes in this because I would argue that God himself has suffered loss. He's grieved himself over things. It says it in the Bible. I think we can overemphasize sometimes the immutability of God. It's an attribute that theologians talk about. Immutability is he's unchanging. And it's true in that his goodness never changes, but he is affected by things just like we are, and some things affect him in an emotional way that he's grieved to his heart about it. It says in Scripture that he was grieved that he even made men at one time because they broke his heart. So listen to some of the Psalms right here. We'll just take little pieces of them. Psalms 42 verse 3 says, "Tears have been my food day and night." That'll sing right there. That's a blues song, or at least a country and western, right? There's a tear in my beer because I'm crying for you, dear. You are on my lonely mind. That's a guy singing the blues. That's a guy who suffered loss, who's hurting, right? Listen to this. Psalms 43 and 2 says, "Why must I go about mourning, pressed by the enemy?" They're just talking about this mourning. This one blows my mind. In Psalm 77 it says, he's speaking about God here. Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? This is going right at the very core, the attributes of who God is. He's saying, is God not powerful enough to do something? Is he not good enough to do something? Is he forgetful? Does he not remember that I'm here? It almost blasphemous. If we stood up and said that today, right? If that was the beginning and the end of my message is, where is God? He seems to be absent. I'd lose my job. And yet we give room to it here, or we should say that God gives room to it right here in Scripture, and says that sometimes you have to pour this stuff back out to me, or you'll never find answers for it. You'll never get over it. So that's the template that we find right there in the Psalms to pour out our heart, to sing the blues. The news comes at us regularly. I mean, have you ever felt like you just needed to go on a news fast and not hear bad news for a while? Because if you whatever your outlet is for getting the news, if it's television or a news feed or an app or whatever, it is like a constant tube of despair. It just like force feeds you, catastrophe all day long. There's a famine in blah, blah, blah. There is death and there is a terrorist attack there. There's just going down our throat nonstop. And then at the half-hour mark, it's just have a good night. Like, how do I have a good night? I'm sorry, what? There's never any room at the end of the news where they just say, okay, we're just going to take the next 5 minutes and realize I said some really terrifying things back there. Let's just stop and grieve what's happening in Sudan. No, the news is never going to give us room for that. The world is never going to give us room for that. And maybe we should make room for that. If we don't, then how do we go forward? I can't hear that kind of bad stuff and just go on with my day. Sometimes we need to stop and realize, wow, some of that stuff I think actually grieves God. I mean, some of that stuff is terrible. Maybe getting in tune with God's heart sometimes means getting in tune with sorrow. So another passage that describes Jesus' own sorrow is in Hebrews chapter 5, verses 7 and 8. It says, in the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. I don't know. I'll just tell you right now, some of that's still a mystery to me. I don't have commentary for you that just puts a neat little bow on that. There's something about suffering that even Jesus learned through. Are we going to just ignore that lesson and run away from that grief and think that we don't need to learn it? That even Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, who knows everything. It wasn't that he lacked knowledge, right? We know one thing for sure. Jesus did not lack knowledge. He was omniscient. So he didn't learn new information through sorrow. There was something else that he learned through sorrow. Something else that expanded because of going through that. So I would say that the reality is the answers we tend to want to give people are information answers about who God is. But it's not primarily information that they lack. When my dad passed away, it wasn't that I didn't understand cancer or that people die, right? I didn't really need understanding. I just needed someone to watch the natural with me and let me cry, right? Honestly, the kind of counselor I needed was kind of almost a silent one. Job's friends did great until they opened their mouths. Sat with them for like 3 days or something before they ever said a word, and that's when it got bad as soon as they started talking. As long as they kept their mouth shut, they were a huge comfort to him. When they opened their mouths, it went really haywire. I think even when we intend the very best, sometimes we say really weird stuff. We just do. My wife and I have lost 2 pregnancies. In the last few years, we've walked through a lot of people losing babies in pregnancy still, or giving birth to a baby that doesn't make it. One of the biggest answers that come out of people's mouth when they hear that is, you're young, you'll have another. That's absolutely true. It's right. They probably will have another. We did. But that baby is gone. That opportunity, that one I had all my hopes in, that's never coming back. That's gone. Is that okay if I cry about that? Will we make room for that in our theology, in our community? Or are we going to rush past it? So I need to keep moving here. So we need to pay attention to how Jesus grieved. We need to pay attention in the Psalms, how we're taught to grieve. The next thing I would say is we need to have patience with the process. We need to just allow it to be what it is and recognize that it's not going to be the same for everybody. There's no template. There's no right way to grieve. I'd say, I know that this is going to sound contradictory, and I'm sorry, but there's no right way to grieve. There are a few wrong ways. Not grieving is the wrong way. That's it. Not grieving. Trying to just ignore it, that's the wrong way. But there's no perfect way to grieve. When my dad passed away, I had to go into pastor mode because I was doing the funeral and it was my family and I am the pastor. So I kind of picked up that mantle and had to run with it for that week especially. My sister picked up the cooking mode. I've never seen so many groceries bought, cooked, and consumed in all of my life. And it was a huge help to us. And she said, we kept telling her, like, if you need to just rest, just fine. You don't have to keep feeding us. She's like, no, this is therapeutic for me. It was what was working for her at the time. And so we let it be. And then one day she had to stop cooking and fall apart. So pay attention to the process. One thing that this guy, I think it's really smart, is he's a professor of theology. His name is Walter, I can't say his last name, Brueggemann, I think. He says about the Psalms, he says, I think you can put them in 3 types. And the 3 types are this: orientation, disorientation, and reorientation. Let me explain that. Orientation is when you read a Psalms and it's like, God is good, the sun is shining, the birds are out, hip hip hooray. And someone's getting oriented on the goodness of God and the truth about God. They talk a lot about his character, and they're completely true. Disorientation is when all those things that I just know to be true that I might have just wrote a song about seem untrue because my day just went down the toilet, right? I just lost a battle, I just lost a friend, something terrible happened, and I'm disoriented. Like, wait a minute, I know this stuff is true, but I'm living in this terrible situation, so I'm disoriented. And you find Psalms that just pour that out. God, I don't know where you are. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why this is happening. Is your arms too short to save me? And then the reorientation is when we start to walk out of that a little bit and suddenly something different happens. We start to see another side of God that we never knew before. Even though we were singing true stuff about him before, now we see a facet of God that we never knew. And I think it looks like this. It looks like finding Jesus for us. When we find Jesus, we're like, it changes everything, doesn't it? I mean, we call it being born again because it changes everything. I find Jesus and I'm like, oh my goodness, I understand life now. I understand this world. I know why I was miserable and I know why I'm happy now. And that's that beginning of our relationship with God. And then catastrophe hits and we don't understand God anymore. And we're like, wait a minute, God, I thought this is how life was going to work. And it kind of throws us off track for a little while. And then that third reorientation, I think the second one is losing Jesus, and the third one is finding the real Jesus. And the truth is, we'll go through that cycle over and over again for the rest of our life. Just as soon as we think we've got Jesus figured out and we sit down to write a song about it, we're going to realize that we're wrong. Something's going to knock our train off the track, and we're going to have to stop and go, okay, God, I don't understand anything anymore. Everything I thought I knew to be true is gone again. And eventually we'll start to see a side of him that we never knew existed, and the truth is we're discovering the real Jesus. And to discover the real Jesus, you've got to stop believing in an old one that you used to think was him that isn't really him. We do that in in the relationships that we have on day to day. Someone will say something or do something and go, I don't even know you anymore, right? Isn't that a thing that we say to one another? Someone that you think is just a pepperoni lover gets a non-cheese veggie, and you're like, whoa, what? I don't even know you anymore. Who are you, and what did you do with my friend? And that's about a pizza. So imagine, what that looks like when we've literally given our whole life to someone and we think we understand them, and then we realize we don't. That we'll never fully understand an omniscient, all-knowing, all-powerful, everything God. There's always going to be more about him to discover. And some of that is going to be through tragedy. So the last piece I want to talk about here is rebirth. That's the third. So we're paying attention, we're having patience for the process, and the last one, this third one, is rebirth. It's coming alive again. Now, I think the quote that Ray used at the beginning of this is genius. The story of that man who lost his mom, his wife, and his daughter all in a car crash. God spoke some real truth to him. And he said, it's not that I got over the sorrow. Rebirth isn't getting over something. He said, I absorbed it. It became a part of who I was. I'm now the guy who lost my mom and my wife and my kid in a car accident. And I think sometimes we're afraid of becoming that guy, right? I don't want to carry the widow mantle, right? I don't want to be the guy that lost the job. And we're afraid of that, and so we try to keep it out instead of letting it in and feeling it and realizing that this is not the lesson I would ever choose, but it's the lesson I have. Am I going to learn from it or not? You'd be crazy to choose this lesson. I don't encourage you to pray for grief. God, give me something to grieve over. There's no reason to. It'll come. But when it does come, I think rejecting it is mostly a mistake. It's coming from a guy who has rejected a lot of emotions over the years. who said no thank you to a whole lot of feels. So, I'm in process here. Neither Ray or I are speaking to you today as experts. We're talking to you as people who are learning and trying to teach as we learn. Listen, Matthew chapter 5, verse 4. Matthew chapter 5 is a Sermon on the Mount. Jesus starts his ministry, and at the very beginning, he gives this epic sermon that pieces of it get re-preached throughout the rest of the Gospels. There's more theology that he gives in this one sermon, starting in Matthew chapter 5, that covers 5, 6, and 7, than any other piece of ministry that he does throughout the rest of his life. And he starts it with these Beatitudes, and he throws us a huge curveball with them because they don't make any sense to us. And the one that maybe confuses us the most is when he says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." There's an aspect of God that we don't get. There's a comfort, there's a piece of him that we won't understand until we also feel loss. And I think partially that's because he knows what that feels like. To me, I think that's the end and the beginning of most comfort that you can give people. Is even if I don't know what you're going through, I really do think Jesus does. I think he understands. I think he suffered terrible loss himself personally. God the Father watched his son being beaten and crucified on a cross. He knows what loss feels like. That gives me great hope in feeling like, even though I might be in a disorientation psalm right now, God, but I know you understand. I'm going to ask the worship team to come back up. And as they do, I just want to walk through a couple things that I think, when we say that God expands our soul through suffering, that he makes us larger, that he grows us through this thing, this is what I'm talking about in some of these points here. Just listen. I think we get a much expanded capacity to wait on God as we walk through this stuff and to submit to his will. I think we become kinder and more compassionate than we ever were before. It changes how we perceive other people and what they're going through. I think we become less covetous, less idolatrous, less impressed with material things because they get put in perspective. In light of great loss, material things kind of lose a lot of their shine. I think we get free from some of our needing to impress people, right? I mean, when you ugly cry, there's no one really looking impressive. And you realize that's okay. I think we get a better understanding and appreciation for the sacred. For the sacred. Listen, I get to do weddings all the time. I'm there for baby dedications. I've been there for the birth of my child. I've never been at a moment more holy than the passing of a loved one. I'm telling you. There's literally no words to describe it. I think we get fewer fears when we embrace this process because we realize the worst that can happen sometimes happens. And God is still good. When the worst thing that can happen does happen, and suddenly, wrecking my car doesn't seem like as big a deal, or losing my job, or like, oh, okay. I think we get a greater capacity to take risks. think we have a greater sensitivity for the poor and for the outcast and for the widows and for the orphans in ways we wouldn't understand before. So I want to close with just this really short story here. I have an uncle from my wife's side of the family. He's actually my wife's great uncle. He's been a minister his entire adult life, and he's in his late 70s now. And he lost his wife this year. They literally grew up together. They got married as teenagers. He was always right here, and she was always right there on the piano. That's just the way it was with them, right? Through tent revivals and evangelist meetings and pastoring churches in podunk little towns in Oklahoma, they were joined at the hip for almost 70 years. I mean, they were just almost that long, their whole life together. And she passed away this year, right beside him in bed. And he's from Oklahoma. He came here to Oregon to visit with family afterwards, just 2 months after she passed away. And he sat on my couch, and I realized as I'm talking to him, there's something happening here that I don't understand. There's some really deep water in front of me, and I better just mostly keep my mouth shut and my ears open and listen. And what he said to me was this. He said, Jason, I have buried hundreds of people. I've done more funerals than I can remember. And I've put my arm around people, and I've loved them, and I've cried with them. And Jason, I had no idea. I didn't know. I didn't know what they were going through. I thought I knew what they were going through, but I had no idea. He says, in light of all this that I'm learning right now, I wish I'd have shut my mouth more. And now he's always been a person that I considered someone really good at loving people. Something happened in this last year that it's angelic. His love. It's different. He would never ask for that lesson. But it was time for the lesson. And the time came. And he didn't despise the time. He suffered through it. He hurt through it. But he absorbed it. So we're going to go to a worship song, and then we're going to be finished. I just want to ask you these 3 questions. Is there anything that you've avoided mourning? Is there anything in your past that maybe you've avoided dealing with, you've avoided grieving over and mourning? The second question is this: if there is something, has it kept you from going forward? How has it impacted your capacity for compassion, for emotion? And then just finally, what would it look like to deal with that starting tonight? What would it look like to deal with it? So, Father, as we go to a song of worship, a song of orientation, maybe, of knowing who you are, I think sometimes we sit around these songs, we even sing these songs, even while our insides are disoriented. God, would you give us a song to express how we feel this week and reorient us on who you really are? In Jesus' name, amen.
Jesus, draw me ever nearer as I labor through the storm. You have called me to this passage, and I'll follow though I'm worn. And may this journey bring a blessing. May I rise on wings of faith, and at the end of my heart's testing, with your likeness, let me wait. Jesus, guide me through the tempest. Keep my spirit stayed and sure. And when the midnight meets the morning, let me love you even more. And may this journey bring the blessing. May our eyes on wings of faith, and at the end of my heart's testing, with your likeness, let me away. Let the treasures of the triumph form within me as I go. And at the end of this long passage, let me leave them at your throne. And may this journey bring the blessing. May eyes on wings of faith, and at the end of my heart's testing, with your likeness, let me away. Oh, may this journey bring the blessing. May eyes on wings of faith, and let the end of my heart's testing, with your likeness, let me away. And at the end of my heart's testing, with your likeness, let me away.